welcome everyone to our
Welcome.
Namesakes live stream.
Yeah, we're going to be launching the Namesakes expansion for the Lore Masters deck today into its open beta period. We're going to be launching all of the expansions for Lore Masters deck and the bridge expansions into their open beta periods week by week over the coming weeks. And we'll be talking a little bit about how the expansion changed and came together, and then doing some live improvised world building with you. And this is one of my favorites because Namesakes, I think, is the one that I love. I think Deities is the favorite of the new wave of expansions, just like overall. But I think Namesakes is like my pet expansion because it's so much fun, and I love what happens when you bang two words together to make a name, and the sound that it makes instantly evokes stuff for me. Like I get goosebumps from playing with this expansion, so I'm excited to share it with everybody.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it because I know when we did you know what? Before we dive right in, I like how we're like going right into it, but before we get started, maybe if there's anyone who's joining us for the very first time, some really quick intros. I think I did the round of intros last time, Peter, so I'm passing it on to you.
Okay.
Oh, when I say you, I'm pointing past you into Peter's screen.
I see.
I caught it, and then I took the lead. Okay, so my name is Peter Czukowski. I'm the designer of the Story Engine deck, Deck of Worlds, and Lore Masters deck. And we here are the Story Engine deck team, including Maroki and Eric. Passing back.
Passing it back. All right, I thought you were going to give me my title as well and all the things.
I was going to have everybody introduce themselves, but I can do introductions.
However, I want to hear you talk about me.
Yeah, of course. Maroki is the project director for Lore Masters deck and the CEO of the Story Engine as a team and as a little publishing house. She came on full time last May. Or basically, actually, I guess last February. But she's been consulting and helping these projects get out for the last few years. Has been just an unbelievable behind the scenes force in making the Story Engine grow and the community blossom. So you have her to thank for anything getting done on time ever. And then Eric Weiss is our community manager. I've been writing with Eric on projects going back as far as probably 2018. But he came on board full time to do our socials, our customer service. He runs the inbox. He's done writing for Lore Masters deck. He did a lot of work with me on the Namesakes expansion in particular, and just is all round super helper dude on our team. And yeah, we're really excited to get to talk to you a little bit about the creative process behind this expansion and then crack things open with you. And also I can confirm I have the digital downloads distribute button ready to go. So at some point we'll do the big drum roll, we'll click distribute, but I think to give some people time to get into the room here and join us, we'll talk a little bit first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just gonna filibuster for a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing that I thought I'd mention is the next series of expansion launches that we're doing. These live videos are going to actually double as the video instructions for the time being. Eventually, we'll do a dedicated video, but for now, this will actually be where people go to learn. So the demo that we're doing today, your comments, your votes, all of that is going to be part of the official sort of rule set for Lore Masters deck and expansions, probably for the next 6 months or so until we have more.
So thank you to our audience for joining us and being part of our I guess like our Namesakes guidebook video for today. Yeah, we're happy to have you on this journey with us. And what were we about? Like I like I was like, before we get started, let's talk about this. And then I have promptly forgot about the thing we were actually gonna roll into. Maybe it was talking about that today. We were launching the Namesakes expansion, and week over week from now until about March 14th, we will be launching a beta for each of our various expansions as part of Lore Masters deck. If you have pre-ordered the deck, you will have access to our open betas, and until we fully launch our final PDFs in March.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be clear, so anyone who ordered any version of the Lore Masters deck, I'm pretty sure at this point, is getting the open beta of the main deck, and you'll get the PDF open betas for any expansion that you are owed a PDF for eventually. Mm-hmm. So if you aren't receiving it when we hit distribute today, it might be that you actually didn't order this expansion as a PDF. It comes included in some of the big bundles, but you can basically go back and edit your pledge to add it to your pledge if you'd like to, or you can pre-order it separately from our pre-order store, which is storyenginedeck.com/.
Oh, I think you and I are both clicking at the same time.
We're canceling each other out. Yeah, that's where you can go to find find the expansion if you want to add it to your pledge, which we would love.
Yeah. I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say that I'm actually excited to be a part of this live stream today, because when we were doing our live streams during the crowdfunding campaign, I wasn't there for
Right, you
this
missed
one.
this one. Yeah.
Yourself, Eric, and Jordan Shively, and I believe someone else as well, had a lot of namesake shenanigans while I think I was getting cooked in Greece.
Yes,
Literally,
you were
quite literally,
in
because there was a heat wave that was so hot it closed the Acropolis. So, yeah. So I'm really excited to kind of participate in it today. And in fact, I actually myself was reading the updates and the newsletters with detail because it was like my chance to kind of participate and prepare for it myself. So for those of you who are joining us today, I'm kind of going to be in your shoes a little bit with Eric and Peter here, the experts, the namesake experts.
We've certainly spent a lot more time with this individual with the spreadsheets that are this deck.
Yeah, this deck required a new tab in the spreadsheet because we had to organize a new card type, which was basically namesakes as an alternate form of modifier. Oh, hey, welcome, Legends of Econet. I'm so glad you're joining us for your first live. We're like I said, we're doing this weekly, and we'll probably continue to do live series in the future. They're a lot of fun for us. Yeah, we do hope you stick around and enjoy it. But yeah, maybe I can talk a little bit about I guess where the namesakes expansion grew from.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated with how it grew from, and interestingly, in some ways, what challenges it posed to you when you realize that lo and behold, namesakes is also in some ways a little twinsy of a previous deck's name card.
Yeah, so actually, I'll turn on the demo just for a second here, just so I can kind of show you. Namesake cards as a dedicated card type did exist in Deck of Worlds. This is our world building deck. So when you build something with Deck of Worlds, you'll pull a region card. We're going to make some barons. You'll pull in a landmark card to add a little landmark to your region. Ooh, we could have a monument in the barons or a creek. Maroki, your call. Do you want creek or monument?
I want creek or monument. I want a wait. What was our first one again?
It's a barons, so a vast
Baron.
wasteland. area.
Okay, a monument.
A monument in the Barrens.
Yeah.
Cool. I like that. It'll stand out really like visibly. Barrens tend to be flat or rocky, but this would sort of certainly jet out. And then we're gonna draw a namesake card. So this is the earliest version of the namesake card. They were a dedicated card type that were part of the main deck, so they weren't an expansion. These are basically little one-word tags that you can add to either a region or a landmark to give it like a title that exists in the lore of the world. So like the Mourner's Barons, the Barons in black and white, the Barons of Moss, the Barons of Sound, or the Monument in black and white, the Mourner's Monument, the Monument of Moss, the Monument of Sound. So go ahead and pick one of these, and then I'll talk about the one regret I have from Lore Master's deck, or the one problem I never quite solved to my own satisfaction.
Oh, I like mourners, but I actually don't know which one I want to associate it with. Eric, which one? You want it with the monument or the barons?
I think it has to be the monument in this case.
Okay, so we're about to see the problem that I never solved with Deck of Worlds. You picked the exact thing that exposes it.
Yeah, I anticipated this.
We tuck it under monument, and you'll see that the text with monument doesn't align. And that's because of a problem that I call suffixes and prefixes, which was a design challenge with Deck of Worlds. So you'll see here's another example of a namesake card. Of the 4 namesakes, the left, bottom, and right of the card all have what I call suffixes. These are text that follow after the word, and this follows in the natural flow of text orientation for every card in Lore Master's deck. However, there are some really cool names you can make when you use what I call prefixes, like sinking. Sinking would come before the word. So rather than having barons of ice, where of ice is a suffix coming after barons, the sinking barons, the sinking monument. Like those you have the chance to do these really cool one-word tricks with adjectives that are really, really evocative. And I actually had a panic attack in like the last 2 weeks of this deck going to print, where I emailed a bunch of the collaborators, most of whom had stopped working on it, but they knew the deck kind of intimately, and they'd had early access to the alpha, being like, I'm overthinking namesakes. What do I do? Because I got so many different people saying that, oh, the text is oriented wrong, and I didn't want to flip the word sinking. That would make it line up nicely here, but then it looks like it's monument sinking instead of sinking monument. So I wanted something that really flagged that the text is different. We tried solutions where we had like a little plus symbol to show which side things went on. We tried a bunch of things. None of them worked. I overthought it. In the end, what I did was I reduced to 1 prefix, because there used to be 2 prefixes and 2 suffixes per card. So I did 3 suffixes, 1 prefix. It's just the one at the top, so it's a little more intentional. There's a note in the guidebook on page 3 that says, this is intentional, it's not wrong. And I still probably get 1 email a year being like, I think you printed the namesakes upside down. And I just have to say, like, You're not wrong for thinking that. You're not the only one who thinks that, but this is intentional. This was the best solution we had. We managed to fix it in Lore Master's deck. We managed to fix it and make it better. But this was the base that we were working from. And I love these cards in Lore Master's deck, but they present a unique challenge in translating to, or sorry, I love these in Deck of Worlds. They presented a really unique challenge in bridging over to Lore Master's deck. And I might actually hand the baton to Eric here for a sec to talk about um, with Deck of Worlds, which I don't think you did writing on the namesakes, but for Deck of Worlds, we only had to make the namesakes work with regions. So it's a really small subset of words.
Before we dive into that, this is one of those moments where I wish I was working with you on Deck of Worlds sooner, because I probably would have just been like, it's okay, Peter. Trust the writers to decide whether it's a prefix or a suffix. And like, if they were going to do the monuments of sinking or the sinking monuments, that's their creative process. Let them go. Let your writers fly.
I mean, your first mistake there is trusting writers.
Yeah.
He's allowed to say that because he's a writer. Okay, so Eric, on to you.
So, what were you just throwing to me, Peter? Again,
when we were working on Deck of Worlds, it was very easy to write namesakes because the text only had to work with regions and landmarks. So we're just working with words that pair with geographical terms to sound interesting.
Right.
There's obviously a lot more card types in Lore Master's deck. You talk a little bit about how we had to adapt.
And it's one of those things too where we even had to adapt some of this. We talked a little bit about this last week, I think, with the modifiers, because you had 8 of them on one card, and when you're doing those 8 modifiers on one card, not every single one is going to work really well with a material, a person, a figure, a faction, all the way across the board. And namesakes pretty much just amplified that problem.
Yeah.
Because like a namesake, especially when you're writing only for places, it's very easy to create something that just has like a certain feel to it that gives you that wow moment. Like the namesakes are my favorite card in Deck of Worlds, because it really does kind of take the concept that you're working with and turn it into something very specific and very evocative. And we wanted to recreate that feeling with namesakes decks, but you can't just slap generic words that work across the board and get that same feeling. Like you can put something like sinking or splendid, but it's like it doesn't really hit as hard as, I know it's just like where No Bird Sings, I know, one of the namesake cards in Deck of Worlds, where it's like that tells you something right away. It's like, why is it ironic? Do the birds actually sing all the time, or is it very serious? And if so, why are there no birds there, or are there birds there but they not sing? And it just immediately kickstarts your imagination with all these questions. So getting to that feeling, but still be having like the broad utility of 7 different card types was a real challenge.
Yeah. And so what we ended up doing is, originally the concept for namesakes was to have, and I'm going to pull out the demo again and kind of show you. Originally the concept for namesakes was going to be that they would be a dedicated card type that looks like modifier cards and has these word fragments. And that there would just be 60 of these cards. So in the end, we decided that we basically cut down to our very favorite sets of terms that we thought were either universal or multi-utility that could work across multiple card categories. And we put those on the namesake cards. We also turned namesake cards into just being modifier cards. We found a way to make them work exactly like modifier cards. So these are modifiers, they're treated like modifiers. There's a little namesake expansion icon on the bottom so that you know that they're from the expansion, but other than that, they work like modifiers. So you'll actually shuffle them into your modifier deck, and you'll draw them randomly. Because we're testing out the deck as a live stream, I'm not going to shuffle them in. I'm actually going to have them on the side so we can pull them intentionally when we want to engineer opportunities to use the namesakes. So we did 32 of these. And then because we didn't want to lose that really cool Deck of Worlds feeling where like you have a queue that works really, really well for that specific card type, what we ended up doing was introducing some lore cards as so basically some of these primary and secondary lore cues based around namesakes. So on the primary card side, we actually have a constructed name. So rather than it just being a generic word like it would be with here's a card from the main deck that shows a regular creature card from the main deck. So we just have simple words. Here we have word stems and then also some icons. So you're actually going to make a constructed name that involves pulling 1 or 2 cards, choosing a cue from that card to pair with it to create a name. For example, this is our Raven right here. I'd pull an event card and a location card. Ooh, an Annihilation Raven. And I'm not even going to pull a. I'm not going to bother pulling a location card because I just love this. An Annihilation Raven. The order shows you which order the words appear in. You can also shuffle them if you want. And then that way you get this really evocative name, and that's what we do with the primary lore card side. The really cool thing about this is it kind of hacks the math of how namesakes work. Basically, now every single event queue and every single location queue in the main deck and expansions is now basically a viable word pairing. It turns those into namesakes. Those cards become extra copies of namesakes that you can use to modify other cards. So you end up with just like literally like thousands upon thousands of additional possible name combinations when you combine these with the random drawing of those. It goes so much further. It goes so much further. I'm really glad that we did this remix. And then on the backside, we have a different set of cues. So we have a background for every card because backgrounds are just a good universal type, and it made sense to do so. And then we have some additional namesakes where it shows you how to make another constructed name for a creature that you're tucking this under. So if we had drawn this regular card from the main deck, not a namesake card, we had a bear. Suddenly we have the Earthshaker bear. And Earthshaker wouldn't work with a bunch of other card types. It wouldn't really work with a material like a Earthshaker glass. Doesn't really make sense. But we had this really cool evocative idea that we wanted to bring to the creature deck, and we still got to do that. So we kind of got to have our cake and eat it too by remixing this. A dung bear. I want to know what it sounds like.
It's like a dung beetle, but a dung bear.
Yeah, exactly.
If you've ever been hiking in the woods up north, you've
look
definitely
for it.
encountered dung.
You look for it. I don't know if anyone has ever camped who's joined in our audience tonight, but we've done some off the grid hikes in Jasper, BC, and one of the things you do when you go to a campsite is you check for dung and you check how fresh it is, because that may or may not determine whether you want to camp there that night. Because as cute as they look in videos, guys, you should really not ever hang out with a bear ever. Things go very badly. Do not recommend. I think the closest I've ever been to a bear is when we saw that one grizzly that was like way across the way, and we were separated by like a quite large gorge and some water. And I'm pretty sure if the bear really wanted to, he would still cross that in a matter of minutes to take us down.
It was also a very large crowd of people on the highway stopped and looking at this bear, so it seemed like it was kind of not interested in getting any closer to, which probably helped.
Yeah. Grizzlies, if they're interested in getting closer, you hella doomed. So, I actually before we that last line I'm getting. Oh no!
There's a great Facebook group called "I Just Know I'm Gonna Die Trying to Pet This," and you just post pictures of things that you probably could have risked death trying to pet.
I would say there is a great conservatory group. I think it's called Katmai Conservatory Group. I can't remember. It's called Katmai National Park. It's up in Alaska. They have an event once a year called Fat Bear Week. So it's right around hibernation season. And it's so great, you guys. You should look them up. They just they track all the different bears that are in their national park, and they take photos of how fat they've gotten from when they first came out of hibernation, and you get to vote for your fattest bear. And it's like their forum board just gets ridiculous. People create the most insane like propaganda things. It's like Bear 427 sinking ships everywhere, and it's a shame humans have never. I don't know. You know what? There's a part of me that's also like, I'm kind of glad we never domesticated bears either, because I think we humans have done a lot of harm in domesticating wildlife, and in some ways, this is Maroki becoming like I don't know, nature conservation activist for a moment here, but like
Do it.
It there's, if you actually live in a lot of locations where there is wild bears, like, Canmore, like out in Alberta or in BC, there is a lot of bears that have not necessarily become domesticated per se, but they've become so used to humans. And because humans tend to feed them, bears tend to wander in to cities like Jasper or cities like Canmore to look and trash and look for food. And because they're not scared of humans anymore. And unfortunately, the thing is that bears are still dangerous if provoked, or, if you get in between a mother and the cub. And a lot of times, if they cannot get the bear to leave, they have to kill the bear. They have to shoot it. And sometimes they choose to do it out of expediency. Like I know in Iceland, they tend to actually shoot first, ask questions later. And because it doesn't actually happen very often, and usually they encounter polar bears, which are very, very, very dangerous. So it's actually like kind of bad that we tend to not respect our natures with boundaries. So yeah, if you ever see bears, do not feed the bears, do not engage the bears, enjoy bears and caribou and deer and elk, all that stuff from a safe distance, please. Thank you. Animals will thank you. Wildlife will thank you. All right, that's my spiel.
I was gonna say we definitely went down the bear rabbit hole. That's the thing, right? The bear rabbit hole.
The bear rabbit hole. So, anywho, all that is to say, I don't know, all that came out of a dung bear.
Yeah.
What I really wanted to get at was if those of you who are joining us today have ordered is the Namesakes decks one of the decks that you have ordered, and if hearing the examples that we've done, what are you guys like hoping to accomplish with it? Or if you have Deck of Worlds, how has using things like the Namesake deck helped kind of qualify some of the stories? Like what are some really interesting combinations you've come up with that you might not have come up with because maybe a dung bear was not on your radar at the time?
Yeah, if a dung bear does show up on your radar, I think it's a run. Like it means it's coming, it's close. Actually, I love this comment from Forrest. It's a great way to create animals that aren't actually the animal, like the horseshoe crab, actually not a bear, and the guinea pig, a rodent called a pig. So yeah, but I do think that you can get some really evocative species, and this works across different card categories. But the types of things that pair well are different, which is why we wanted to be really conscious in some cases with how we do the pairings. But yeah, this is a great example. I think Forrest gets it.
Yes.
Well, I think we're probably about ready to distribute. Do we want to do a big drum roll?
All right. Is everyone waiting? Is everyone, our audience, waiting? Like eyes on your inbox or refreshing your pages? Are you guys ready?
If you can get your inboxes open so someone can confirm if it arrives.
I know.
Right.
This is also a really great way for us to confirm that things are going out, because sometimes I don't know about you, Peter, when you distributed the last beta for Deck of Worlds. Like I don't know if you distributed and just kind of sat there and was like, I hope that worked.
Yeah, instead of this where it's like exciting and there's a crowd of people like cheering on, I was like just alone in a room and I clicked a button and then I was still alone in a room. So this is a lot more fun. All right.
We're ready this time.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have just launched the Namesakes expansion for the Lore Masters deck live on the air. People are having a chance to check out the open beta PDFs and to take a look at the content of the deck. The Namesakes expansion is used for creating nicknames for your lore elements in World. If you want to check it out, you can pre-order it from storyenginedeck.com/lore, or if you're one of our backers from our backer kit campaign last year for Lore Masters deck, you can simply add it to your pledge. It's lovely. Cool. But to start, I'm going to just sort of recap how the deck works. So the Namesakes expansion is 60 cards. It comes with 32 modifier cards. These are specially formatted modifier cards that look like this. And on these, the little arrow indicates another card you're going to pair with this card and the order that the words appear in to create the nickname. So there's 32 of these, and you're just going to shuffle them in with your other modifier cards. There are 48 modifier cards in the main deck of Lore Masters deck, so you're going to draw these a little bit less often than normal modifiers, but that keeps them special, and you'll still get several of them every time you create a lore web, so that's nicely balanced. So that's what the modifiers look like. And then there are 4 of each of the 7 types of primary lore cards as part of this expansion as well. On the primary side of these cards, you will see a little name with some icons, which is going to how we're going to construct a nickname by combining 2 cards. And on the back side, as with secondary cues, you're going to see various sets of cues, some of which are link cues and some of which are little cues to create nicknames. And you're going to shuffle these cards in with the same card types from the main deck. So these creatures, I would shuffle into my creatures pile. these materials that shuffle into the materials pile. So everything is going to be randomized. Of the 36 cards of each type that exist in the main deck, you would now have 40 of each type, and you'd have 4 of each of these namesake cards mixed in, which you draw 1 in 10 times, which is basically once every 2 lore clusters of a given type. You'll either get it on the primary side or the secondary side. So it's going to come up often enough that it's really interesting, but not so often that you get bored of it. And that's how you prepare to use your namesake expansion deck with the main deck. However, today, because we're going to be doing some learning and practicing, I'm going to keep these cards to the side so I can grab them when I need them, so that we can do some really cool illustrative case studies and examples. And to start off, we are going to draw one of the primary card types and create a nickname right off the bat using a primary card from the namesake expansion. So in the chat right now, if you could all vote on which card type you would like to start with. We can start with a faction, a figure, an event, a location, an object, a material, or a creature. So go ahead and vote in the chat and we'll see what we get.
Options are endless. I feel like we need to create like a menu for future live streams that we have like dedicated things like this where it's like, hello, you may pick from these options here.
It would be very cool to be able to visualize them. What I can do at the very least is put one of each card type out on the mat here.
Oh no, the vote's gonna get hard.
I'm just going to take a quick pause. Peter, we got an email today telling us that one of the cards on the deck of World's namesakes are upside down.
Oh, no way.
Like Love literally it came in at 10:30 this morning.
Speak of the devil.
Perfect. Yeah, there we go. Forever my cross to bear. You know what? Like I am a believer that if like it, the designer doesn't get to decide that they were right and that the people who don't understand are wrong. Sometimes people do miss like signs and instructions, and you can remember that. But there probably was a solution. We tried a lot. Maybe there was a solution that would have made it clearer. We couldn't figure it out for Deck of Worlds. We did figure it out this time. The way that it works this time wouldn't have worked for Deck of Worlds because the systems are different, and we actually needed to have one of these little triangle arrows on the modifier versions of these cards to mimic what a regular modifier looks like. The arrows are actually used to track how your lore web grows, so those are really important. But let's take a look at our votes here and see what we're going to go with. So we've got
because everyone spells my name wrong like all the time that I just accept almost everything else in my life as long as it's like generally correct as fact. I'm like, oh, that's upside down. Oh well, doesn't matter. The words are still right. Like I don't think too hard on it because I'm so used to like something like my name just being constantly spelled incorrectly that my kind of tolerance for error is really large. Everything else I just sort of make happen. I wish YouTube had the ability to do live polls or something, because
yeah, Twitch does. It's one of the things that I've been thinking about. Like, I wonder if Twitch would be a good place to host as well. But for now, we're going to do the Byzantine system of voting by chat.
Look, man, I am old enough that whenever I wander into Twitch to see other streams, I literally have no idea how to manage everything, do anything, see anything. I'm like, how does this work? I don't get how it works, guys. I don't get how it works, and I know it's partially because I'm a gamer, but I'm not a gamer, but
it's just kind of like an old forum. Whichever voices yell the loudest get the carry of the day.
Yeah.
Okay, where did we ended up at?
We ended up with creature. I think creature was ahead by 1, and then forced to put it up by 2. So actually, next we're going to vote on which creature we want to do, which Q we're going to use. So we've got a raven of sorts, and then we'll be drawing another card to figure out what kind of raven it is. We have a wisp of sorts, we have a tree of sorts, and we have a lion of sorts. So go ahead and vote for lion, raven, wisp, or tree. And something else I'll mention very quickly is, so the cues on, the primary cues for these cards are a mix of words that don't appear anywhere else in the deck. So we picked some entirely novel ones that we thought would pair really interestingly with other card types. And again, we restrict which card types you're going to pair with because we would experiment with different pairings and see which card types produce the most viable pairings most often. Sometimes you end up with some like funny nonsense pairings, but it's part of kind of playing the odds of drawing 2 or 3 cards. Some cases, just 1 card is needed to find a pairing that sounds really good and evocative and interesting.
I like nonsense pairings.
Especially in the animal world, there's some animals with some real nonsense names out there.
Yeah. All of the birds that are tits are like the great tit.
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay, so Peter, do you remember how we went to Lunar New Year dim sum with you and your folks this past weekend when you were still in town? And there was this, and I was asked by your father what was this plant. You know, it was clearly like a lucky plant. They had all the
Yeah.
they had all the like red, you know, like the lucky signs all over it. And I was like, what's this plant? And I was like, kumquat, as I like literally know it's not a kumquat. And then my sister's like clementine, or someone else said clementine. I was like, there's no way there's clementines. And I was like, I don't know, it's a lucky plant. And I felt really, really silly because I'm like, this is my culture. And it's literally in a Chinese dim sum restaurant. I cannot tell Peter's father what this plant is. So eventually I used the plant app and looked it up. And it was called the nipple plant, or like the nipple plant, or the cow's udder tree. And I was like, my God, this was not the name I expected to actually show up.
There is, I think, at least one creature in this deck. Yeah, there is a creature in this deck that uses another creature as its modifier. So you could have like a cow tree. In this case, it's this one. You could have like a dog shark, a cat shark. You have a lion shark. You have a bunch of different types of animal sharks.
That's what catfish is.
Yeah, catfishes. So yeah, we did actually set up that possibility of having a not a cow tree specifically, but you know, we're close.
I do think we have 5 ravens and 4 wisps right now.
That's close, but I think the ravens have it then. Okay, so we're going to go ahead with Raven. So I'm going to now draw cards matching the icons shown. These icons work just like link queues. So they follow the same rules that link queues do in the main guidebook for Lore Masters deck. Also, I'll just mention we include a copy of the main deck guidebook. I think it's definitely in the main Lore Masters deck PDF download. If not, we'll start including those in every download packet of expansions so that if you need to refer back to the main rules, they're always there. But we're going to draw an event card, and we're going to draw a location card, and we're going to pick one of those 8 primary queues to fill this in. So here we go. So you're going to go ahead and vote for one of these 8 words. We could have it be an inheritance raven, a storm raven, a defeat raven, a reckoning raven, a square raven, a summit raven, a hall raven, or a bathhouse raven. So go ahead and vote in the chat. My dog is barking his head off at something at the door, so I'm going to mute myself temporarily.
It's okay. It's very faint.
He sees a raven. I don't know. I kind of like a square raven. I don't know why though. I can't decide if it's a literal square.
A literal square.
Like a little boxy raven.
Well, and a lot of birds are named after the beak shape. So square could be like have like a very blunt beak or something,
or a horn. Yeah, it's supposed to be like a hornbill or a.
What was the thing that my sister was speaking about the other day? That apparently they're planning on changing the way birds are named.
They're changing all the birds that have they're named for a person, or will no longer be named for a person. So no more Cooper's hawks, and I can't think of any other names that have person names. But if you play Wingspan, there's lots of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I think what they were saying was like because some of those people were not good people, so it's probably like a good thing that we like are trying to eliminate their names.
Yeah, I'm on board with like not remembering or at least not glorifying people who also created major detractions to other elements of human life and knowledge.
Yes.
All right, so we got I'll count the reckonings.
I think it's reckoning pretty handily, actually.
All right, the Reckoning Raven. I like that. There's kind of 2 ways you can read that. One is you can read that as like as just like almost like a gerund or an adjective describing raven. So like, oh, this raven, what it does is reckoning. It can also be a raven that like appears when reckonings happen, that gathers before the reckoning, and it's more of like an event based.
That's the way I'm kind of interpreting it. That really kind of sticks out to me.
Well, if you have any theories on what you think this means, go ahead and pitch those in the chat. We love getting different interpretations on how the cards can come together. In the meantime, I'll explain a little mechanic about how these sorts of paired cards work in terms of counting queues. So like I said, you could almost imagine that this is a primary queue that's linked to your main card at the center of the lore cluster via almost like an invisible secondary queue, link queue that says that this card is named after this card. So this is actually going to take up one of the slots. Whenever we create a lore cluster in Lore Master's deck, we tuck a card under each side, creating 4 different little details that fill out the lore cluster. So this actually counts as one of them. So we've already used up one of our lore slots there. Also, any pairing where you think that you could pull this card out and learn more about it, so we could create an event, some kind of reckoning event that the reckoning raven is named after, you can expand it just like any other queue that's tucked. So you can always explore and learn more about any of the cards that are tucked as part of these name constructions. It's optional to do so, and a lot of the time I think it's really fun because it helps you follow those lore threads through your world, including what things are named after what and how those things are tied together. The other thing that I love about names as link queues is that the name doesn't predetermine what the relationship is. So this reckoning raven could be called the reckoning raven because it came after a reckoning, the species evolved out of that. It could be that they are harbingers of it. It could be that people just associate them with it for unrelated reasons. They could have become the symbol of that reckoning, and that's why they're called the reckoning raven. Like, you decide the nature of the relationship. Naming relationships are really open-ended, and I love that because it leaves a lot of flexibility for the world builder. Okay. Well, we are going to go ahead and draw some secondary queues. These are just going to be secondary queues from the main deck. In the event that you are drawing cards from the namesake deck and you accidentally draw kind of 2 namesakes as part of the same cluster, you have the option to apply both. In fact, let's just do that. This is you have the option to discard and draw again, but you can also apply multiple names to the same thing. You can build one long constructed name, or my favorite thing is there's 2 names for something, and which name people use tells you something about their beliefs or which culture they belong to. And I think that's really cool. So I'm actually going to go ahead and draw. I was not intending to do this, but I love going off script. I'm going to draw a secondary queue from the namesakes deck, and we're going to have the option to apply another namesake to this raven. So it's going to have 2 different nicknames. So go ahead and vote for one of these 4 queues. We can have a background where the species travels to a specific location to die. We have a namesake where it's called the woolly raven. We have a namesake where it's called the silk spinner raven. Or we have a namesake where it's called the big mouth raven. So you can go ahead and vote for travel, woolly, silk, or big mouth for the raven. Maroki, are any of these speaking to you? Do you want to sway democracy here with a suggestion?
Maroki is staring intensely at the screen, trying to find Boar's due and figure out what the issue is. I originally thought maybe it's because I was trying to see whether orders that the add-ons were added after the fact, but cards are not charged yet, whether that was creating a barrier, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like anyone who's made a pledge at the time of the backer kit campaign or added it on afterwards, even if we haven't locked orders yet, should have gotten it.
I believe that if someone added it on during the campaign as a single expansion, they get the PDF, but if they added it on after, they don't, I believe.
So I thought that, but I saw some people did get it, so I'm trying to cross-check that further. I will come back with an answer very shortly. If not, then maybe Force Deuce just the lucky, I don't know, fallen through the weird glitch of technology, like gap in the Matrix moment. Wait, Matrix is usually bad though, so maybe that's not a good example. Fallen into the Matrix, gotten lost in the Matrix. Hey, look, a distraction. Let's look at these cues while Maroki uses technology wrong.
I personally kind of like the idea of woolly here because I think it kind of gets at what you were just talking about, Peter. Like the woolly raven is kind of the proper name for it. It's this big bushy raven, and I think it would be kind of super cute.
Oh, I love silk spinner raven though.
But it's like I also kind of like the like a woolly raven would exist in a place that's cold or in a place that maybe it's gonna be. So if these ravens show up, it's like, oh no, it's gonna get cold now, or like bad things are coming. So it's like it's the reckoning raven because it's a bad omen, but it's the woolly raven because that's what it is, just a big puffy raven.
I think the woolly ravens have it in the chat too, although it's very there's a lot of votes for a lot of things. Like people seem to like this set. Let's go ahead with woolly then. So the reckoning raven or the woolly raven, it's known by 2 names. Amazing. Okay. So, and at this point, by the way, because 2 of the cards that belong to creatures are already deployed, if you were using a full Lore Masters deck, you would be down to 38 cards, only 2 of which remaining are namesake cards. So the chance of drawing another one in this cluster is like very, 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 very low. So the deck kind of self-balances for how many pulls of one kind make sense to fit in one cluster, which is sort of a neat little design feature of it. So I'm going to go ahead and draw from the main deck a secondary cue. So this is a normal secondary cue from the main deck for a creature. So we can have a background where it was given as a gift to a notable figure. You can have a trait where it has tentacles, roots, or filaments. It can have a trait where it communicates via song, or a trait where it has long limbs or a long neck. So go ahead and vote for long, gift. We'll call this one tentacles, but it'll mean all 3 of those things, or song. Song, long, gift, tentacles.
Song, long, tentacle.
Oh, that's cool. I like Corey Allen Carter's suggestion here of the raven being like a reverse stork, the death bringer. I think that could be very cool.
Ooh, that's fun.
Oh, I like that.
It's not a natural reckoning. It's a human made reckoning.
Yeah. All right, well, let's start checking out these votes. All right, we've got song, gift, song, neck, long, which is the same as neck. So that's 2 for song, 2 for neck, 2 for gift. So we're all even. Song, long, gift. Oh wow, it's so tight.
Yeah.
How about Moroki? Why don't you tie break this one? Do you want given as a gift to a notable figure, tentacles, roots, or filaments, communicates via song, or long limbs or neck for our reckoning raven / woolly raven?
Okay, hold on. Let me look at this. Notable gifts. Villains. And this is a woolly raven.
It is a woolly raven.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's do given as a gift.
Okay. Love it. And we're going to go ahead and draw a figure card to figure out who it was given as a gift to. So this is a figure card from the main deck. Do you want it to be given as a gift to a disciple, to a smith, to a bookbinder, or to an educator?
See, it's like if you're giving a woolly raven to a disciple, like what is it for? Like, is it going to become their familiar or something?
Could be. That would make sense for a disciple.
I kind of like the bookbinder. It's kind of got like a the materials we use to make this book kind of a vibe. It's like here's your bookmark. It's just a feather.
You're just gonna rip the raven apart?
Feathers, like birds shed feathers.
They don't shed them like that though. Like how many?
I just need one for the bookmark.
He's a bookbinder. He's gonna be binding many books.
I said bookmark.
Well, I mean, the woolly raven presumably produces a lot of whatever its fleecy plumage is. So
yeah, but only when it's warm. So what? Like, are you gonna? Is it one of those things where you have to wait till the raven is molting for the season? So it's like once a year you give a molting woolly raven to someone, and then you're like, here, he's about to shed like a gazillion feathers.
Well, the educators ran away with it in the votes.
They did.
It's just kind of cool, like a teacher with like a very like scholarly looking raven at their shoulder. I think that makes a lot of sense.
It's kind of like very not very, but it's a little bit Game of Thrones where it's like the intellectual class uses the ravens, to communicate with one another and send very important letters.
Yeah, and it's all just like them having petty academic squabbles. Actually, I don't have a question. I have a comment, like sent by. Okay, cool. So then we're going to draw one more secondary cue from the creatures cards here to give one more trait to this raven. Substitute owl. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna have a background where the woolly raven is hunted or farmed for a material. We are gonna have a trait where it has a crystalline or mineral body. We're gonna have a trait where it grows algae, lichen, or spores. Or we are gonna have a trait where there's extra eyes, ears, or mouths. So go ahead and vote for extra, for hunted, for crystalline, or for grows. Eric, do you have any faves from this set?
Well, I kind of hinted at hunted or farm for material, but it feels like I was outvoted on that one.
I mean, that can still be true, just not in a bookbinding capacity necessarily.
Yeah.
I'm kind of digging with and there's a couple of votes coming in here for it. I'm kind of digging the grows, algae, lichen, or spores. I like the idea that this thing is so fluffy that like when it's in like wet climates, it just starts to mold on the inside because it's like impossible.
Oh, no!
that poor bird.
Cute to, like horror.
Or it's just stinky. Like it's not the kind of thing where it's like a little bit itchy and it's very stinky and it's basically like
so it's like athlete's foot is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
From being cute to being like a nasty creature.
Some of us love stinky animals. I got a stinky dog. I'm all about it.
Are you all about it? Do you actually like your dog when he's stinky?
I love dog stink. Honestly, I had 2 senior basset hounds for a long time, and they stank. Like you could wash them a lot, and they would still just stink. And it is a very it's like a good stink, like stinks like home.
No, hard disagree. No, I don't know. Sorry, Peter.
You can tell that we don't have a dog here.
Fair enough. All you dog stink lovers in the chat, come back me up, please. All right, so let's count these votes. Okay, so we have grows, hunted, and extra, and grows again, hunted again, extra again, first over crystalline, hunted, grows again, poor moldy raven. I think the grows have it. I think they just have it, but by a little thread. Plus, I cast my vote that way. So, all right, we got a little stinky spore raven who, if its plumage gets too soaked or too wet for too long, starts to produce a stinky little algae.
See, the thing is like the ravens will do something that your dog probably will. Your dog, like a raven's gonna be able to spread that so much more far and wide than a dog would. Like once that raven takes off, that's gonna be everywhere. And I'm just imagining it like if you own a raven. Wait, who did this raven get given to? An educator. Like in their classroom, the educator probably has other things in the classroom. The raven, like if the raven isn't kept clean, it's gonna spread its raven spores everywhere. And then like I don't know, the educator's like books are gonna get moldy as a result, and like all its other creatures and preserves, then the educator's room is gonna get it. It sounds horrible.
And now it's part of the story because what if those spores are the cause of the reckoning?
I was thinking that this is
all I'm thinking of is that oyster mushroom kit thing I showed you recently. So I saw this thing that just talked about if you want to grow mushrooms in your house, for the love of God, grow any mushroom but oyster mushrooms, because it turns out oyster mushrooms basically like will grow in anything that's damp. So if you have a little mushroom growing kit and you live in an apartment with any sort of damp, the spores will, like any spores, which you won't see, will start growing in other parts. So, and there's all these pictures of people who have oyster mushrooms like growing out of floors, growing on their couch, growing out of like their tables because it was slightly damp and an oyster mushroom spore got on it.
Yeah, I've got a friend who's a mushroom grower, and I think he has to be very, very careful about like sanitizing and containing. Yeah, well, this is a problem for the educator. They're gonna have to deal with it. But I love some of the takes here in the chat. I just flashed some of them on the screen quickly, but I love this image of you startle the raven and a huge puff of spores bursts as it takes flight. That's really cute. It's a great visual. You cultivate the mold to send secret messages or warnings. It could be a thing where like you draw in the mold in like a small sample of the mold and it grows later under a certain light to send like a secret message on paper. It's an efficient symbiotic relationship, which I like. Thinking of the spores from Nausicaa. I have not actually seen Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, but I've heard it's excellent.
What?
I know. I'm so understudied in anime. It's anime and manga.
But like Miyazaki's like a whole different like class of his own. It's that whole thing.
I've seen Howl's Moving Castle, Porco Rosso.
Porco Rosso.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have seen Totoro, and I've seen one more. Oh, Princess Mononoke. So
Okay,
I've
so
not
you're not completely
not
understudied, but
completely. Yeah.
Nazca needs to be next on the list.
Yeah.
It's about like a kind of post-apocalyptic, highly polluted planet, and there's a lot of spores from plants on the planet, but they also talk about how like maybe the spores are actually a way to kind of heal the planet, and that they actually aren't as poisonous. So that's just my little teaser for you to go watch Nazca.
I was gonna say we have been kind of thinking in the like spores are just horrible like fungal zombie type spores that just smell terrible, but it's like it could be like a delicacy or something like that. It's like maybe it's like these spores are what you use to make yogurt or something like that.
Yeah, or
I,
like salad
I think it's
starter.
probably because the damp raven just doesn't sound all that clean or a delicacy.
Well,
We'll
the
find
raven's not the
out more about it
delicacy.
as the cards come out. Moroki, because we put you in such discomfort, you get to pick the next path here. Do you want to learn more about the Reckoning? We can expand the Reckoning into its own lore cluster, or do you want to learn more about the Educator?
Probably the Reckoning, because it just
Cool.
I don't know, since we're going down this huge apocalyptic path of something.
We're either going down a very dark path or a very or we're turning this around or we're turning this around.
Yeah.
Um,
I am fascinated by everyone's heavy investment in these spores and this raven and the Reckoning.
Gross the Raven Nevermore. Love it. That's so good. Or yeah, Spore the Raven Nevermore. Okay, so when you expand a lore cluster, this is a mechanic that's covered in the guidebook for the main deck, but basically you'll pick a primary card that's tucked underneath another card, you'll pull it out and you'll rotate it so that the primary queue, the queue that you're going to use in your lore cluster, is facing you. So in this case, Reckoning was already facing us. We don't have to do any rotating. That's great. So Reckoning is our new queue. And then you're going to draw a modifier card, and you're going to pick a queue from the modifier card to tuck on the side of the newly expanded card that will basically show where it expanded from. So in this case, I'm going to selectively draw a namesake modifier. We're going to pick one of these 8 queues to describe Reckoning. So it could be called the Exile Reckoning, the Rhyming Reckoning, the Farmer's Reckoning, the Reckoning that Saw, the Reckoning that launched 1,000 ships, the Singing Reckoning, the Bloodletters Reckoning, or the Sulfur Reckoning. I am really loving a number of these. I'm already getting some goosies.
It's like in some weird way, if you want to do like the Sulfur Reckoning, it's almost like the Reckoning is trying to eliminate the spore ravens because sulfur can be used as some sort of like pesticide or suffocation, or like a farmer's reckoning because the farmers cannot handle the spore ravens spreading spore all over their crops and fields.
The farmer's reckoning would be interesting because if the spore does cause that, then like spores can be catastrophic for crops, especially if
like
it's like
even if it's beneficial in some respects, if like maybe because they are being used in like they're being domesticated and taken to educator settings, now they're suddenly like infiltrating city life and regular life as opposed to being in the wild, I don't know, Arctic swamps of which there's where it's been, how you like, how they say if you ever end up watering a desert and you end up making a desert green, somewhere else in the world will suddenly become the Sahara. And that's why ecosystem, it's like Burning Man. They talk about like that part. I can't remember the name of that particular land or desert that Burning Man's supposed to take place on, but I know my friends who go to Burning Man say they go through great pains to ensure that the desert stays the desert, because they say it actually wants to turn green at any point. So they actually work really hard at, like, they tarp up the ground they camp on. They do gray water systems. They all, when they brush their teeth and shower, it all goes on the tarps to get evaporated off, because if it actually ever hits the ground, things will grow. And if they do that, it actually can spread huge ecosystem changes across the planet. So maybe when you have things like spore ravens, they are meant to actually not be taken out of their natural habitat, because they actually can cause like huge ecosystem damages when taken to other areas.
Yeah, I think that's why I like farmers, and I think farmers may have the vote here.
I think it does. I did really like Rhyming Reckoning.
Yeah,
I think it pairs well with the Educators as well. It's like, especially after seeing the Gross the Raven Nevermore. it feels like Raven is a very poetic bird, shall we say? So I thought that one might have been fun, but I think the farmers have it.
The farmers have it. I also like the idea that because ravens are birds, they can learn sounds, and I think there's cases of ravens learning a limited vocabulary. It'd be interesting if
I think
their
so.
if their bird song or their answer was like they say a word that rhymes with the word that you said. That's just like what this raven does as a species. So they know that it's somehow linked to the rhyming reckoning, and this reckoning raven. But or maybe they're just like into alliteration because they have a lot of R's going on between the rhyming reckoning, the reckoning raven. Um, so yeah, so and just to make clear here, so I've tucked the modifier farmers underneath the card reckoning. You'll see the little arrow here in the box. So this tells us that the word that's farmers reckoning, so that farmers comes before the modifier card that's being pointed to by the arrow. The arrow also tells us that we expanded from the Raven queue here, linked to an event, to this event. We follow that arrow. So, yeah, go ahead.
Question, like, does it have to though? Like you just said, there's a little indicator that says how it's supposed to show before farmers reckoning. But if I was a writer, if I was like, why can't it be the reckoning of farmers or reckoning of the farmers? Because I just inherently decided it sounds more interesting that way.
Yeah, so in the guidebook for namesakes, we basically say you can treat the construction as a starting point. We wanted it to be clear how the word should be constructed to avoid confusion for people who are starting to use the deck. So that's there to suggest a card order, and to definitely it's required to indicate the flow from one card to another. That's part of this is a standard modifier from the main deck. We use little triangle arrows. We wanted to make sure we had one of those to continue that system. And this way you can sort of follow which queues expanded from which queues, and you can follow your train of thought throughout the deck. But totally, yeah, there's a section in the guidebook that I'll actually read out loud right now because I liked the phrasing that we came to about how you can choose to interpret it. So,
see, and this is why I was like, we don't need guidances. We should just let the writers do whatever they want.
I said it earlier. It's like your mistake is trusting writers to do what they want.
So yes, this is from the backside of the folding guidebook. The namesake may be a literal epithet, so it could be exactly what it's called in the world, or metaphorical inspiration for the reputation that this lore element has in your world. You can also just treat it as you can reformulate the name. So if we liked, the Reckoning Raven could become the Judgment Raven if it turns out that Judgment was a better word for a world. The Farmers Reckoning could turn into the Reckoning of Farmers, or the Agricultural Reckoning. You can play with these. It's meant to give you a starting point, but not to lock you in necessarily. So that's a great question.
There we go. Farmers and rural people.
Oh yeah. I like that.
And that's one of the nice things about two nicknames. It really does tell you. It's like one group calls it this particular thing because that's how they see it, and then another group has a much either more positive or negative connotation, and they've got an entirely different word for it.
Yeah, it's like raccoons. In Toronto, we call them trash pandas. And where wasn't elsewhere in the world, they're considered these adorable little creatures that everyone wants to keep as pets.
Everyone that I've talked to in the UK loves raccoons and really thinks of them of these cute creatures that seem very approachable, as opposed to just garbage monsters that cannot be contained or thwarted. Actually, just quickly on the topic of trash prowling animals and our previous conversation about bears and conservation. There was someone who worked in conservation who had to design the trash bins for bears, said that there's a huge overlap between the stupidest people and the smartest bears. So trying to design a trash can that cannot be opened by bears but can be opened by humans who aren't reading instructions was very, very challenging. I just thought that was a very funny sort of description of
I think I actually remember asking about that once. So I independently from you also heard the similar thing where they could only make a trash can so impenetrable before humans can't get inside of it either.
Yeah.
It's like baby gates. It's like baby gates. I hang out with my friend's house now and they have a 1-year-old. I can't access half their cabinets anymore because I do not understand how those little gates and clips work.
Yeah. I've been thwarted by many a baby gate, I will not lie. I think let's go ahead and draw a namesake secondary queue here to give this another nickname too, because I'm really loving the double names right now, and we're pushing the system to its limits. This is more than you'll see in a standard draw on average by far, but it's just kind of cool to see what happens when you do it. So here we go. This is a secondary queue for our event. We'll be voting on this in a moment. Oh no! 1 second. My secondary camera disconnected, but I think we're good. The settings all look good. Great. So So rather than having a background for the event, we have this can be a catalyst or a fallout. So this can be a cause of the event or an effect of the event. So it could be that the farmers' reckoning was a result or cause of a location changing ownership. We could give it the namesake of torches. So it could be the reckoning of torches, could be another name that the reckoning is known by. The reckoning of good intentions could be another nickname for this namesake, the reckoning of good intentions, or the reckoning of bees, which actually for a farmer's thing makes a ton of sense because the bees could actually be the vector for transporting the spores even further. I might actually just I'm gonna say I'm trying to sway democracy. Vote for bees.
Or like
vote bees.
I like how we're like actually trying to sway democracy now. I'm pretty sure some of our early live streams we just like went by democracy. We have just taken over. We've asked for all your votes, but we've taken it away. I think the other way we could look at it too is just like the spores are bringing certain plants and certain wildlife that is bringing like a huge sun surge of bees,
or maybe bees in this world hatch from spores.
Ooh.
Vote bees, they're good buzz.
Oh no. See, this is who I'm getting married to.
So unfortunately, I don't fully understand Ryan's question there about using only 3 sides. What I will say is that when you expand a queue, the modifier takes up one of the sides already. So this occupies this slot, and we won't be pulling a card to go in the sides. We're only going to pull 3 queues. So if that answers your question, I hope it does. And if not, you can go ahead and clarify for me, and we'll see if we can answer that for you. But yeah, I think bees have the vote. So I'm going to go ahead and tuck this here. And then just a little bit of like board planning strategy. So like using your space effectively. Whenever you're tucking a queue that does not have a link to it, so this, of bees is just a dead end. It's not going to expand into another card. Whereas this queue from earlier, gifted or given as a gift to a notable figure with the educator. This is a linked queue. I knew I was going to draw another card which might expand, so I left room on this side to expand. Whenever I'm drawing a card that doesn't need to expand, I keep it on the borders, and that way it's just very easy. I always have room for my my clusters to grow and expand. It's just a good way to think about how you want to set up your cards when you're doing pulls. Oh yeah.
Oh.
But I love it because like the spore could be, doing some kind of parasitic thing on them. That's I love it. It works on a
there is that. It's like pretty much any like if you kind of like hear horrifying things that exist in the world, the spores that take over ants.
Yeah.
If anybody doesn't know this, like a spore that kind of lands on an ant and then like burrows into its brain and takes it over. And then the ant will kind of like climb, I think, up a tree or like go to a certain spot where the spore wants to like root and grow. So basically, you get these like zombie ants that are mind controlled by a fungus.
Isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. So yes.
Yeah. Maybe that's why they're being given as gifts to educators, because the educators need to stop some sort of reckoning. Maybe it's not the educators' fault. Maybe they're not giving the spore ravens to educators, and that's the reason why they're entering cities and rooting things for farmers. Maybe they're being given to educators because they're like, dear God, please research this because bad things are happening to this planet and you need to find a solution.
Well, and the queue is written says to a figure. So it could have just been like there's one notable educator who got one as a gift. We can also take that as part of like a larger thing, but we're not required to do that. So we have creative options there.
This is me George Lucasing and trying to link everything up.
Yeah. Oh, I love doing that. I love getting the threads going. Okay, cool. Well, let's draw some more cues for our Reckoning of Bees / Farmers Reckoning here. And yeah, let's keep that educator in mind because we're probably going to expand that soon, and it'll be really cool to think about. If it's a one-off or if it's part of like a trend where they like desperately needed people to research this to figure out a solution.
I was going to say, if it's a desperate research thing though, it's like here's a gift of a raven. It's your homework.
Yeah. And I love the idea that
happy birthday.
I love the idea that it was given also like this person's been applying for funding for this kind of research for like years and getting ignored, and then finally like the thing they're trying to research turns out to be a national crisis, and now you come knocking with the gifts.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, who's got a bird for me now?
here's that grant money you were asking for in exchange for your report. You must literally solve our national crisis.
It's like the Raven comes in a box, and like inside that box is an envelope full of $100 bills.
Yeah. And actually, what I'm going to do, so Ryan, I think something that might help you out here. I think a lot of people do tend to get confused with the primary cues, where with primary cues, you only use the cue at the bottom. And primary cues are cues that are written in white on a colored background. So our Raven here is a primary cue. Our Reckoning is a primary cue. When you draw a primary cue, you only look at the cue at the bottom. You ignore the other 3 cues. We're not working with Lion, Tree, or Wisp on this creature card. We're not working with Defeat, Storms, or Inheritance on the Reckoning card. We are ignoring those extra cues. However, if you are getting confused by the extra cues just being visible at all, we developed a set of sleeves that cover the extra cues so that you just don't see them. Like, you literally only look at the cue that's active. And of course, when you tech cards, you're covering all the inactive cues. So you'll only be looking at the words that you chose. You won't be looking at any other distracting words. You can find the focus sleeves at storyenginedeck.com/lore under the accessories section. If you give me a moment, I'm going to see if I can pull up just a mock-up image of them so that you can take a look at how they work. I'll just need a sec here. Well, let's draw the next cue, and then I'll pull that up as we're drawing the next cue. So we're going to give more detail to this event. There can be a catalyst behind it that was belief in a false prediction or prophet. So we would draw an event, or we would draw a figure card to figure out who the false prediction or false prophet is. Fallout, so this is a consequence of this reckoning, would be that a faction founded a new nation or headquarters. So we are going to draw a faction, and we'd also draw a location. This is actually a double draw. Or a catalyst or fallout, so you can interpret this either way, that a staple food, ingredient, or species was depleted. And for this, we would draw a material and a creature, and we would choose one of them. So we got a lot of options here. So go ahead and vote. Oh, yeah, and then a trait where it's notably silent or loud.
It's almost like the staple of food is like the obvious answer.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. That does make a lot of sense. Especially be fun to get some more creatures in this ecosystem. But go ahead and vote for silent or loud, for faction, for staple, or for false. So
has anyone ever taken any of these lore clusters that we developed in a live stream and spun their own little story or lore like out of it? Because I feel like we get so many different ideas on these live streams from everyone. We all come up with these, and we could go in many different directions. We often always pick one, but given all the comments that come through, there's so many directions you can always take in. I wonder if anyone has ever been like, that was a pretty dang good like little lore piece that we've created from our live streams. I'm gonna take it and do something with it.
Yeah, definitely let us know if you've taken and run with any of this stuff. I know for me, the Archive of Endlings. So if you missed it, our last stream was when we launched the main deck as an open beta, and we did a creative session. That has been one of my favorites to date. It was a real highlight for me. If you missed it, go back and check it out under our live section on YouTube. It was the February 8th stream. And yeah, we created what's called the Archive of Endlings. We gave it a nickname without using the Namesakes deck, just using sort of ideas that had come up from the card pulls. But the Archive of Endlings, I've been thinking about once a day for the last week. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm obsessed. I'm definitely going to do some kind of like microfiction about it, because I really, really like the concept.
And you actually asked me to like type up a summary that maybe people could check if they wanted to. And I was actually working on that right before this stream. And I think one of the problems with summarizing these streams sometimes is like, well, I know what the lore cluster looks like at the end, but there were all these kind of loose threads that sometimes get tied in and sometimes don't. And so it's like figuring out what the official stream is or what the official story is more or less impossible, where it's like, well, this is kind of what we came up with, but really you can run with this in any direction you want. So it's it's like trying to, like, I don't know. It's like trying to summarize like a rock dropping in the water or something like that.
We almost need like a choose your own adventure option in it. It's like, we did this, but here's the 6 versions that we possibly could come up with. And then from there, we all could move in loosely this direction. Here's the other 4 options that you could have explored from it.
Yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of it all. Like, we could all walk away. I say this all the time. And I you know, it's funny. I've been blathering this, but I don't actually know how many educators have done this in schools. But I've always thought a great exercise that educators could use the deck for in schools is to give one prompt to a class and then ask the class to come up with their stories and see how different all the stories are. Because I think that is really a great way for people to see how, like, for young people to see how unique the way their brains work are and how unique their own version of creativity is, that you don't need to come up with these like massively novel ideas, because your ideas are always going to come within yourself all the time.
Yeah, and there's actually a really cool lesson plan that we have. It's available for free on the website if you go to storyenginedeck.com and then click on, I believe, the resources tab, lesson plans. It's the second or the third one. It's actually a lesson plan built around, you build a story prompt around 2 characters, and then you write the same story or scene from both of their perspectives. And I think it's really fun because you can have like one person write one side and one person write the other side. So you get this really cool sense of like the same scene from 2 different sets of eyes, 2 different writers, and 2 different character perspectives. I think that stuff is really fun. Taking a look at multiple, like the way that the prism of creativity refracts light in different wavelengths, I think is super duper cool and a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and count the votes here, and then I'm going to go ahead and show.
I think the food and the staple food or ingredient depleted has it by a pretty good margin.
Yeah.
Sweet. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on this side so that we've got room to expand that queue. So we're about to pull the next queue, but first I'll just show you how the focus sleeves work. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Computer.
Melville, I'm glad. Share the screen.
Share the screen. All right. There we go. So this is how, actually, do you think we could temporarily remove that comment? Yeah.
Oh, dang it.
Okay. Beautiful. So yes, this is how the focus sleeves work. So there's basically a keyhole shaped opening on the front with one opaque section, a clear section. You slide your card in, and you will be able to see only the queue that you're working with. So in this case, it would be Chantry on that faction card. Once they finish sliding the creature card in, you end up with Raptor. I think we actually ended up deciding to do them opening from the top rather than the bottom as shown in the diagram, but otherwise this is exactly how they're going to work. And they're just a very handy way to make your queues a little bit easier and less distracting with the unused queues in the primary cards.
And I think the way we ended up designing for them to work too is that if your cards are already sleeved, because I've learned that people really love sleeving their cards. I guess I really should have known better because I sleeved all my Pokemon cards back in the day. But
yeah,
we've
asked the printer if it's possible to leave a bit of extra room in the sleeve for the sleeve cards. We can't guarantee it yet. We're
trying,
checking, but we're trying to make that work.
We're trying really hard so that you guys don't have to constantly unsleeve and resleeve all your cards when they're all nice and protected like that. I think the other tip I sort of had for Ryan as well, if the other thing is, it's not just necessarily the one queue, but all the qualifiers and modifiers around it. If you're also struggling just visualizing like all your different modifiers and it's hard to look at things upside down, I think that's also where things like the Lore Master's Journal really comes into play, because then you can take notes on everything as you're developing it. And with a journal, of course, first of all, I find that when you write things down, at least for me, because I'm very much a visual learner, when I write things down, it kind of makes things a little bit more concrete for me. And I won't forget what I'm about to refer back to in parts of my story. And it's kind of archived away. And I can also refer back to it, obviously, in a few days. But if also like visual alignment is something that you want to kind of make a little bit easy for yourself, then once you create each cluster, you can always write down everything. And that way you can, when you're building a new cluster, you don't have to constantly be like looking sideways and all around trying to just read what you've already previously come up with.
Yeah. I definitely like, it's a neat thing for keeping track of the connections too. We looked at a little dedicated box for keeping track of all the link queues and stuff like that. Neat little resource. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and draw a material and a creature card to pick what connects here. And to give an example of what happens when you draw a namesake card in the middle of another queue, when it's going to be tucked first, I'm going to draw I think I'll draw a material from the namesake deck and a creature from the not namesake deck that we're going to choose between. So you can choose any of the 8 queues on these cards. Go ahead and vote in the chat. So we're going to have a salt, a paper, a wood, a gland, a mosquito, a kangaroo, a dragon, or a tiger. And again, this is for our staple food, ingredient, or species.
We did have one recommendation to have the depleted creature being the bees.
Oh yeah, that's true. We could just straight up do a little. We could do a little link queue here if we wanted to. So bees is the 9th option. You can also vote for bees. You can always vote for bees. Plan B.
Plan B.
So it would be an interesting one because salt is something that, at least on planet Earth, so far is not a resource that's about to go away anytime soon. So to actually have something like salt being lost is reasonably catastrophic. If nothing else, I have begun to we were watching the series Alone on Netflix, which is kind of like a survivalist series where expert survivalist gets dunked somewhere, I guess, and they just have to live alone. The person who manages to survive the longest wins $500,000 or something. And they did Alaska, and of course it became increasingly harder for people to hunt, so these competitors were losing substantial amounts of weight. But the other thing was it was hard for them to get fresh water, and they were depleting in electrolytes, and they depleted so poorly in electrolytes that they literally were passing out and having dizzy spells because they just didn't have like proper salt in their bodies and electrolytes in their bodies.
Yeah,
and they needed salt.
Yeah, your nervous system and reflexes go into sharp decline.
Yeah,
when
it's just one of those, like, in a sodium laden society, and in a society, like, again, where salt is just not considered in shortage for most of us. It's actually crazy if a world suddenly was depleted of salt as an ingredient.
I do like the also like the salt apocalypse or the salt catastrophe or whatever, the Saltmageddon. I just like as a name. And I'm going to go ahead and just do a little link queue here so that we know that it's the bees, the stable species of the bees, that's going to go extinct as a result of this. And I'm going to temporarily hide the comment from Thank You, Tara, recalling our bee-focused live stream. But we can see our little link tokens in the bottom right here. Link tokens come free, included with every copy of the main Lore Masters deck. If you are getting just the PDFs, we recommend using paper clips. You can use pennies. You can use tokens from other games, Mancala beads. Pretty much anything that's usable as a counter or token is a good way to make a little trail of breadcrumbs that shows you that instead of tucking a new card under here, or drawing a new card and adding a new element to the lore web, we use this to track connections between new cues and old cards that we're going to reuse as an answer to one of the link queues that open up. So yeah, these are not the final link tokens, but they're close to what the final link tokens will look like. And the color of them is just to help you distinguish multiple paths on the same board. The color is not specific to the card type. Cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw one more material card. And I think what we'll do is we'll do one more cluster after this, but we're going to speed run it. So we'll speed run the Educator probably. And do one more run here. Okay, so one more secondary cue for the event here. Catalyst, where the greed of a notable figure drove this situation. A fallout where a smoking crater or ruin was left over afterwards, and we could draw a location card to find out what was turned into a crater or ruin. A catalyst or fallout where the sudden scarcity of a resource or type of object contributed or happened as a result. Or a trait where what happened was misunderstood at the time. So go ahead and vote for greed, crater, scarcity, or misunderstood. Maruki, anything speaking to you while democracy takes place?
I'm just trying to, like, it's in some ways this reckoning is getting so big. I'm like trying to decide, like, in some ways I want to find some things that make sense versus it being too left field at this point. It's like, I don't see, like, I wonder if, like, a smoking crater or ruin would almost be good, where it's like, if I'm talking about, like, damaged ecosystems and stuff, like, eventually everything would just burn, right? It's like the whole, like, is like when you have those really dry years in a forest, everything just, like, burns down by the smallest spark.
Yeah.
And if there's something with the spores, a depletion, like there's an imbalance, something is just gonna, like, get destroyed. And it doesn't have to be fire. Like, I know I'm saying fire because it's saying smoking rune, but it could be still like a smoking rune if things like even if, like, animals or insects raise things.
Yeah.
Or actually, even in Nazca, they kind of do something like that too, where they think they're trying to contain it, but inherently they're like burning everything down. So it's not even like the actual reckoning, but it's even the attempts to contain the reckoning is what destroys it.
Yeah, I do like when the attempted solution makes the problem worse. Is always a really interesting moment in like a disaster story. I think the misunderstoods have it, but that could
No, the
also be.
scarcity also has it, I think.
Oh, okay, hold on. So scarcity, misunderstood, scarcity, misunderstood, 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 misunderstood.
Oh, I changed Marcel. I swayed democracy.
Okay, hold on. So if
I
Marcel,
still lost, but I'm happy that I was able to sway democracy.
it's always nice to win a vote. All right, cool. Well,
I do personally like misunderstood. It's kind of like the idea. It's like, oh, at first it's like, oh, it's great. There's no more bees outside. It's going to be so much easier to do all of our work. And all of a sudden the bees are gone. Where are the bees?
Yeah. and it could be one of those things where the misunderstanding of what was going on could contribute to the thing that Maroki was saying about like people not understanding what's happening is a major contributing factor to whatever efforts they take being misguided and therefore causing more damage. Like I really connected with that idea, and I think that can be folded into misunderstood at the time. Like half of the problem was like either ignorance or panic, and that's what let things get further out of hand. Yeah, I think that's a cool one. So then let's go ahead and expand educator, and this will be our last cluster that we're going to do. So this is the educator who received a raven. We can also possibly make this, we can decide that multiple educators got it, but this one is interesting for some reason. Both those interpretations are on the table and we're allowed to use them. So we're going to go ahead and draw a modifier. Oh, look, we happen to have drawn a namesake modifier, perhaps because we're
Go
stacking
figure.
the deck for
How did we do that?
So we have the cackling educator, the puppet educator, the bloodless educator, the educator of invention or educator of inventions, educator of the dawn, the educator of thresholds, the trader's educator, or the sky educator. And again, if educator as a word is getting in the way of like, it's not pairing super nicely, you can change that to teacher, or it could just be that like this person has a name and their name was like cackling Sally. You can apply the epithet in a variety of ways. One note that we do have in the guidebook that I wanted to quickly mention, in fact, I think all 3 of the Lore Mastery expansions have a note like this about the specific ways that our sensitivity and sensitive material system interacts with these decks. In particular, when you are using namesakes to name people or groups of people with the factions, names have a lot of power, and especially when it comes to like giving a person a nickname, if that person didn't have a choice in it, that name's going to mean and have a really different effect. So we just basically urge caution in thinking about how names get applied to people and who holds the power in the relationship of naming.
So, I will say of these, I really like puppet educator. I kind of like there's something here where it's like, here's the raven. We need you to figure out what's going on here. By the way, we're not going to actually let you do any like you're caught in the educational bureaucracy. We're not actually going to give you the funding or the support. We're not going to listen to any of your recommendations.
Yeah.
Here's the raven. Just give us a solution, but only one that like falls into a certain parameter. It feels kind of very bureaucratic and on the ball.
Yeah.
It would, but it would almost make me wonder, like, who's puppeting.
Well,
like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, that's like that would give to an interesting backstory, right? Like, it's like,
yeah, we could even draw another figure card to figure that out if we wanted, or a faction card to figure out the faction that's sort of controlling the educator.
See, this time I was trying to lighten it up, and the educator of inventions was the one that was actually standing out to me. So thank you everyone who voted inventions, because I was like, man, we were going down such like a dark rabbit hole of the reckoning, a depletion, and then meanwhile, like the educator, I could almost imagine the educator to kind of be like a more innocent person in all of this, the person who's trying to do good, trying to invent something, trying to like, I don't know, maybe reverse the depletion, trying to like, it's like the voice that all the farmers aren't listening to because they're like, it's like, no, wait, bees are actually good, or these things are good. And they're like, no. And they're like, but I create this thing and it's going to make magic honey from the spores. And we're actually going to like solve this problem. The farmer's like, no, burn everything down.
I mean, if we really wanted to lighten this up, I think Moose is onto something here, but I'm going to take it a step further. It's not just an educator who uses puppets. It's an educator who teaches puppets. Like he just has an entire classroom of like the cast of Sesame Street So his students are like Bert and Ernie and Big Bird, and he's trying to teach them about this catastrophe that's happened. But it's just an entirely felt-based classroom.
Yeah. Another option for Puppet is if the spore is like one of those mind control spores, that the Raven is actually able to start controlling people.
Oh my god, it was gifted to the educator, and then it just took over the educator.
Yeah. Okay, so hold on. I think we got to count these because it's a pretty even split. So I'll go ahead and count inventions, 1. Maroki, can you count thresholds? 1. Eric, can you count cackling? 1. And then Maroki, can you also count sky? 1. Thresholds, 1. Puppet, 1. That'll be Eric, your other hand is puppet. Thresholds, 3. Puppet, another 1. Trader, is anyone doing trader? No, it's a new one. But then another one for trader. So I'm going to count from either end of my hand. So the traders are 2.
Oh god.
Inventions, 2. So does anyone? I think something has 3. I think Maroki, you have 3 on one hand, right?
Thresholds has 3.
All right. So the educator of thresholds, or like threshold teacher, even could be. Oh, you know what? Like thresholds being like a sense of oh, sorry, and that goes on this side to show that
this speed round isn't speeding.
It's not going all that fast. We're going to go a little bit over time here. But I like the educator of thresholds, or like the teacher of thresholds, like their expertise is like liminal spaces in biology. So like species barriers and is an example of a threshold. And that's really relevant if we're talking about a disease passing from ravens to bees to crops here. So they could be like the person who's really good at studying the species barrier. And that's like kind of the reputation that they've got. That's like one way you could run with it. But I'm curious for pitches in the chat while we draw our next cue. Keeping in theme, I'm going to go ahead and draw another nickname for our educator out of the nicknames deck. So they might have multiple names here. Oh, interesting. Okay, so they could have a background where they are a local legend. We would draw a location card to figure out where they're a local legend. A namesake card where they're the former educator. So they got fired as a result of something that they did. Lost a tenure track job. The greatest educator, or greatest teacher. Or the repentant educator, repentant teacher, which kind of picks up on some of the trader vibes from before. So go ahead and vote for legend, former, greatest, or repentant.
I like thought about local legend before, but then I was like, maybe that's too good. Like maybe I feel like people wouldn't necessarily respect the educator. Like I'm kind of seeing them as the one that no one's listening to. That's why I wanted the inventions. I kind of imagined the inventor that was like always messing up until they didn't, but no one wants to listen to him anymore because he's come up with so many bad inventions. But since we moved away from that,
former
I don't feel like
repentant would be good for those though. Like I like the person lost their job and their credibility, and now they're like kind of fighting to get taken seriously. But this time they actually are right about it. So what do we got here? We got repentant legend.
It's like Belle's father in Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking of the entire time.
Yeah. Great. I think it's a great example. Well, I think we had a tie between repentant and legend. So next vote wins it.
Can I corner tuck?
Repentant and greatest can. Yeah, repentant. No, sorry, no. Yeah.
Repentant and local legend can.
Yeah. And we had 3 for. Yeah, we can do it. Okay. So I'm going to tuck them here so that local legend can expand downward if we were going to. Okay, so we have the repentant educator, also known as the educator of thresholds or the teacher of thresholds.
For anyone who's never seen a corner tuck before, I realize like at this point we are so used to all this, we rarely bring it back up. But since it's our first time we're seeing it today on the live stream, yes, guys, you can corner tuck if you see the 2 cues are adjacent to each other and they're both working for you.
Just slide it right in there. It counts as 2 cues, and there's specific rules for it on page 6-ish of the guidebook, of the main Lore Master's Deck guidebook. Great suggestion. We're going to go ahead and pick. We'll go ahead and pick a. This is going to take. We're going to go a little over time here, but I did want to pull one mid-prompt namesake card. So we're going to pull something that's going to require another pull to complete, but it's just going to happen. We're going to deal with it here. So they're a local legend, and where are they a local legend? It could be in the vault of somethings, the something garden, the something's sea, or the Something's Summit. And we'll draw a card to figure out what the something is for each of those after we pick Summit, Vault, Garden, or Sea. And to speed things up here, I'm going to go ahead and we won't vote on the next two because we got to move through a little bit.
We can do the first to get to 3 system again.
Yeah, sure. We'll do first to get to 3 then. So go ahead and vote on Summit, Vault, Garden, or Sea, and first to 3. Okay, Garden has it. So they're a local legend in the Something Garden, and we're going to draw a material and a creature to determine what. Also, if we wanted to, we could just say the Bee Garden or the Spore Garden or something that's already on a card already, if we were really inclined. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and we'll do first to 2 because we're drawing between 8 prompts here. So first to 2 votes: roots, thread, magnet, dirt, deer, badger, algae, or basilisk garden. So again, first to 2 votes. Eric, call it when you see it in the chat for me, but it'll be magnet garden, the dirt garden, the root garden, the thread garden, the algae garden.
Algae. It's the algae garden.
Love it. Okay.
Ties back to our.
I was hoping for people to vote algae garden, so there you go.
Love it.
Maybe this raven doesn't grow spores. I think the original card says algae on it.
Algae was
one of the things.
Algae, lichen, or spores. Yeah. So algae is fully viable as a
maybe it's just a very seaweedy raven.
Yeah, it could be like a really downy raven that like is actually a seabird, and like ravens notoriously can adapt to so many different climates. So it could be like and actually the plumage could have evolved to help it float, right, to add buoyancy. So.
Well, I will say this is sometimes why it's like doing these exercises is kind of fascinating because we were kind of set on these. We've been talking about these spore ravens for a while, but you draw one card and all of a sudden you can really just veer off and say, you know what, I was wrong. This is going in a different directions. It still could be a spore raven, but you could definitely end up in places you didn't expect as you keep drawing more cards.
Yeah, and that's why I love these decks. And then we're gonna do our last pull here, and then we'll just do a little recap of what has come so far. So we're gonna draw a standard figure card from the main deck. We're going to draw on the secondary side here. So our educator, this is the, I'm starting to call them the threshold nerd. Like they're called the threshold nerd because they're really known for studying these thresholds and barrier cases instead of the educator of thresholds. But I also love the idea that they're called the repentant educator because they messed something up at some point. So they could have a background where they played an improbable role in a major event, which could just straight up be the reckoning. An agenda where they want to infiltrate a faction. A trait where they know the location of a powerful artifact, perhaps something involved in the reckoning or involved in solving it. Or they got a green thumb, or they're good with animals, which would make a lot of sense for our biologist here. It's also really funny if animals hate them and they're trying to study them, and like animals just always hate them. That could also be fun. So yeah, go ahead and vote for improbable role, infiltrate, artifact, or green/good.
Which one has the faction on it? Is there one?
Yeah, that's the infiltrated faction, which infiltrate is what we would vote for there. So first to 2.
We're still tied right now.
Yeah, improbable role, I think.
I think it did because major event
is improbable. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. And then I think we're not going to draw another card because I think that's the reckoning. I think that this teacher.
Oh no! Wait, actually,
it's okay. It's okay. Just let it go. Let it go. Let it go.
It happened.
I've overthrown democracy.
All right, we've got oopsie, sleeve whopped it here. So we've got background where they played an improbable role in a major event. We love it, and I think it'd be really, really funny. My take here, it'd be really, really funny if this educator was sent a gift of a raven to study to help figure out what's going on with this plague, or like the early spread of something, and then that raven ends up being like a huge patient zero for spreading this algae or whatever that starts to wipe out crops. And the person who's supposed to be really good at noticing this happening and studying it is the person who basically caused it, because their research tool that was like delivered to them ended up being kind of the harbinger of the apocalypse, and that's how they got the name Reckoning Ravens. I think that could be really fun. I'm liking that idea.
I didn't realize we decided that the apocalypse was coming. As far as I know, it was still a reckoning. It was a bad reckoning, but the apocalypse is taking it too far, Peter. Too far.
It's a mini apocalypse.
It's just a famine.
Yeah.
It's just one horseman of the apocalypse.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, a one horseman apocalypse. That's a great name for something, actually. One horseman apocalypse is a great name for something, like a band. I think that's a good
Yeah,
like
I was
one,
gonna say a
one person
band.
band.
This
Yeah,
apocalypse isn't big enough for 2 horsemen.
yeah. This apocalypse ain't big enough for the two of us. Love it. Okay, so just to do a quick recap here, we started off by naming the Reckoning Raven, which was also then to become known as the Woolly Raven, perhaps because it grows thicker plumage or some kind of wool or fleecy material in response to environmental changes. We also know that that big fleecy body grows algae-like inner spores, and we're thinking probably at this point it's going to be algae. We know that one was given as a gift to a notable figure who was an educator. The raven seems to have had some kind of role in the farmer's reckoning, also called the reckoning of bees, where we've decided that whatever the spore or algae was started to spread and affect crops. People did not understand what was happening at the time, misunderstood at the time. And we believe that this started to lead to the death of the bees, which are really important pollinator species in this world. Our little educator there probably had some kind of improbable role in it that they weren't entirely sure about. They're sometimes called the educator of thresholds, or I like to call them the threshold nerd. Who studied the species barrier or barriers between ecosystems. They were a local legend in the algae garden, which is probably where they did all of their studies. And they're also known as the repentant educator, perhaps because of all the damage that they caused accidentally in their research role here. Lee Gunby says the educator originally made the connection of the ravens and did so incorrectly. Now they're hunted, and he's discovered that the imminent extinction is going to cause bigger problems. That's also super cool. I love
See,
that.
you need to like watch Nazca tonight now. I feel like because you'll realize that this educator and this whole situation we created is probably the inverse of Nazca.
Okay, interesting.
You almost you need to do while you have recency effect. Get a Disney Plus trial subscription just for tonight.
I think I have. Oh wait, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that I password share Disney Plus. So just in case I'm not supposed to, then I don't do that. I never would do that.
Yeah, none of that at all.
Never, ever. And thank you, Moose. Yeah, these live streams are a ton of fun for us too. And honestly, I learn more about the deck every time I do a live stream and I get other people's takes and votes and we get to discuss. There is nothing quite like magic of it. One of the things that I really think is fun about the decks is, and one of the reasons I think they've been so useful in classrooms for teachers, is that it gives you a way of exteriorizing the creative process so that it's something you can point to and discuss. Normally the creative process is really hard to discuss because it's happening in your head, it's hard to articulate, but we can like point to the cards and say like, oh, I see a connection here, or these two things connect. It becomes like a really good case study for talking about creativity, creative choices, creative interpretation. And I just think that that's really cool. So thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you all so much. We always have so much fun doing these live streams. We're doing them weekly until mid-March at least. Each week we're going to be exploring each of our expansions. We did the main deck last week, so if you're interested in seeing what we did with the main deck, you can check us out on the live stream sections on YouTube. But we will be exploring, I believe, the Emblems expansion next week, where we're going to get visual. I know, asking writers to get visual and artsy, visual artsy, I should say. Writers are artists. We are artists, but we're going to get visual next week. And then the following week, we're going to do the bridge expansions, then the deities expansions. And then we are going to release all the final PDFs to the world.
And do a big mashup where we create using all the decks mixed together.
All the decks, so many decks.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really, really excited. I'm a little, I've done playtests with all of them mixed up together, but I don't think I've ever done one of those live. So it's gonna be fun. We're gonna be doing all the mechanics all at once, all the time.